Guru Prasad Vaishnavi. Yadu Dynasty. Guru Prasad Swami Maharaj. Anje Bajena Katokya Vasangivan Yadyavam Guramaho Harisangyam Ante Vaharaja Yadu Dynasty. Manje Valena Nugatokya Gatam Hiparam Yajadavam Guruaho Avasha Jamaste Ubara, existing as the burden of the earth. Raja of the kings. Pitana, the armies. Yadubi, by the Yadus. Yadusya, eliminating. Gupte, protected. Swabahupi, by his own arm. Achintayat, he considered. Aprameya, the unfathomable Lord. Manye, I think. Avane, of the earth. Nanu, one may say. Gata, it is gone. Api, but Agatam, it is not gone. He, indeed, Bharam, the burden. Yet, because Yadavam of the Yadus, Kulam, the dynasty, Aho, Abhishakyam, intolerable. Aste, remain. Translation and purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead used the Yadu Dynasty, which was protected by his own arms, to eliminate the kings who with their armies had been the burden of this earth. Then the unfathomable Lord thought to himself, although some may say that the earth's burden is now gone, in my opinion, it is not yet gone, because there still remains the Yad of a dynasty itself, whose strength is unbearable for the earth. Everyone can please repeat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead used the Yadu Dynasty, which was protected by his own arm, to eliminate the kings who with their armies had been the burden of the earth. Then the unfathomable Lord thought to himself, although some may say that the earth's burden is now gone, in my opinion, it is not yet gone, because there still remains the Yadava dynasty itself, whose strength is unbearable for the earth. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has remarked in this regard that although ordinary people might think that the Lord had now removed the burden of the earth by killing the demons, re-establishing Dharma, and so on, Lord Sri Krishna himself could detect that there was further danger from the irreligious activities of his own family members who were acting improperly. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that a just king will refuse to punish his own enemy if his enemy is innocent, but he will punish his own son if his son actually deserves punishment. Thus, although in the eyes of the world, the members of the Lord's own dynasty are always worshipable, Lord Krishna detected that by their intimate association with him, some members of the Yadu Dynasty had become indifferent to his will. Since such whimsical members of the Yadu Dynasty could act freely, being relatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they would surely cause great misfortune for the world. And foolish persons would take such whimsical behavior to be the will of Krishna. Thus, the Lord, whose desires are inconceivable, began to consider the need to annihilate the indifferent, contemptuous members of the Yadu family. Om Jnana Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vichaitanyamano Vishtam Kapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadam Mahyam Vidati Swaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishkaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Astyatya Vishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasati Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there are several places in the Bhagavatam where it mentions this about the Yadu dynasty. First, in the first canto, when Arjuna is speaking to Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira sees Arjuna returning from Dwarka with a very solemn look and seeing bad omen. He thought for the worst, and Arjuna confirmed, yes, the Lord is gone. Arjuna said that I have become so weak that some thieves have stolen away the queen. But our acharyas remarked this cannot happen. Srila Prabhupada also mentioned this cannot happen. How can an ordinary thief touch the goddess of fortune and steal her away? So actually Krishna converted himself into thieves and took the queens back home, back to Godhead, so that they would not suffer the unbearable separation from him. So this is Krishna's arrangement. Krishna always, he promises, that my devotee will never suffer. What to speak of his own internal potency? How could they possibly suffer? Of course, in one sense, they're always suffering, because they're constantly, whenever Krishna through his pastimes, becomes absent, or just like the queens of Dwarka were suffering because Krishna was thinking about going to Vrindavan. And they thought, if he goes, he'll never come back. So therefore they were suffering. But that suffering creates unlimited bliss. Not like our suffering here. There's two types of suffering, called the suffering from difficulty and suffering from happiness. Two types. We think suffering from difficulty is unbearable, but actually all of our great acharyas and Srila Prabhupada again and again says that this type of suffering is actually a blessing because it makes us callous and makes us want to leave this material energy. But the other kind of suffering is very dangerous, which is called material happiness, which is actually a product of suffering, because material happiness means it's like people think they're happy when they sleep, but they're only sleeping because tiredness is suffering, and therefore they find happiness. Or we think eating is happiness, but it's actually relief from hunger. And if you analyze all material suffering, it's just a temporary relief from some greater material suffering. So a devotee sees things properly, but the materialistic people, they never see things properly. So Krishna, he heard, Yudhishthira, he heard, and then Arjuna said, after he spoke about that Krishna had been present, he was telling everything that happened. Krishna had been present, just like it's saying here, he repeats the same thing, that Krishna helped us to relieve the world of this great burden through the Kurukshetra war. And then he spoke about the same thing, that the Yadu Dynasty, because Yudhishthira had asked, what about the Yadu? He said, yes, unfortunately, they have all killed themselves in a big fratricidal war. And again, our acharyas say this cannot happen. Then again, in Uddhava, he speaks about the same thing in the third chapter. He says, in the second chapter, he speaks about separation from Krishna in Vrindavan. And in the third chapter, he speaks about separation from Krishna in Dwarka. And he speaks about this. He says the same thing as being said here, that it seemed like the burden of the earth was relieved to some degree by the Kurukshetra war. But there's another burden. And that burden is the Yadu Dynasty itself. He doesn't go into any detail as we do here, because this is the actual explanation. And of course, the real burden, according to Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, the real burden is not the impious people. Just like right now, as it also stated in the Bhagavatam, that the greatest burden of the earth is when someone does not speak the truth. And now a whole society is dedicated to not speaking the truth. Everyone's dedicated to illusion. Even sometimes devotees, they become bewildered. And they cannot understand properly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're creating, we're relieving. We're trying to relieve the earth of its burden. Just like when Prithu Maharaj appeared, the earth was so burdened that people were hungry because there was no yajna. Everything was, the Vena Maharaj had silenced all the Brahmins and stopped all yajna. And the earth had practically reached, even there wasn't sufficient food. And Prithu Maharaj was very angry. And the earth said, it's not my fault. He pointed his arrow at her. She took the form of a cow, knowing that he won't hurt her. Taking the form of a cow, he won't hurt her. He said, it's all because of lack of yajna. So we're supplying the yajna. So many people are doing yajna. It's like every time I go, I travel, I see people, they have like 25 strings on their arm. Looks like decoration, some people. Doing so many yajnas. But what is the purpose of that yajna? For personal benefit, they think yajna is like insurance policy. Sometimes they think Krishna. No. Even sometimes when we're neophyte devotees, we want Krishna as an insurance policy, not as the object of my surrender. Not as to whom I will give everything and surrender everything. No. When we're in the neophyte chapter Vida, these four persons, to some degree, especially the first one, who wants Krishna, please be my doctor. Please get rid of my suffering. So they want Krishna to do that. And the second category, Krishna, please be my provider. Give me what I need. They're also trying to employ Krishna. And the third, they're a little kinder to Krishna. Give me some understanding of what everything is all about. And the fourth are better. Please give me transcendental knowledge. But everyone is saying, give me. They're not saying, Krishna, please accept my offering. This is the duty of a devotee. But this only becomes complete when we're on the platform of pure devotional service. So, therefore we have to strive for pure devotional service, not for our benefit, but for Krishna's benefit. Because by pure devotional service, there's no burden for Krishna. Everything is simply for his pleasure. And then we make so much advancement. But also, then Krishna voluntarily accepts the burden. He accepts the burden. I want to become subordinate to my devotee. Yat prayasho titok yas yatrayas. That even though Krishna is unconquerable within the three worlds, he becomes the subordinate to his devotee. He wants to do that. But the devotee doesn't want that. A devotee doesn't want Krishna to become subordinate because they don't consider Krishna subordinate. They consider Krishna the object of my love. No. Krishna is the object of every activity, every thought, every word, every deed of all the residents of Vrindavan, of the queens of Dwarka. Krishna, everything for Krishna's pleasure. But even the queens of Dwarka, there's a slight, very minimal tendency in their prema that they will ask something from Krishna. But of course, the cowherd boys like Sridham, sometimes he asks Krishna, you need to eat more. Because I'm always defeating you. You need to eat more. And sometimes Madhu Mangal, he will say, Krishna, can I have some more laddu? But this is all rasa. There's no demand. But we have to be very careful when we deal with the Supreme Personality of God. So now, in this verse, we see that the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is explaining, this is just the vision of ordinary people. This whole pastime of how the Yadu Dynasty was by Krishna's arrangement disappeared. Even Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in one place, it's not that it was Krishna's desire. This is the result of karma of all the living entities that they fight. Queen Kunti also says the same thing. She says that the dissension, the social dissension, social problem. Right now there are so many social problems in the world. People can't even figure out what gender they are. So many social problems. And she says, it's not because of Krishna. It's not Krishna's arrangement. This whole subject matter was dealt with by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, when he said that actually, since everything comes from Krishna, then suffering must also come from Krishna. And therefore Krishna is imposing suffering upon us. But the answer is no. Because when you're a pure devotee, you can easily overcome all suffering. Therefore, suffering is actually Krishna's mercy to help one to want to come to the transcendental platform where there is no more suffering, even in the material world. For the topmost pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, Haridas Thakur, they were not suffering. They were being beaten, beaten and harassed, but they were not suffering. Prahlad Maharaj they were trying to kill him. Haridas Thakur were trying to kill him, and they were not suffering by Krishna's protection. Krishna actually, Lord Chaitanya explained this to Haridas when in the Mahapraharana Lila, when Haridas came before him. He said, actually, when you were being beaten, I saw this, and I started to descend from Vaikuntha with my chakra in my hand, ready to cut off their heads. But when I saw your merciful attitude toward them, I simply stood in front of you and I took all of your suffering away. And then Lord Chaitanya turned and showed Haridas all the whip marks on his back. That, of course, he cannot be whipped, but he's showing that he protects his devotees. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, this pastime for the devotees is so that the devotees understand properly that actually this was all Krishna's arrangement. Why? Because for first and most foremost reason, he knew that the Yadus would suffer so much from his separation that he wanted to bring them back home, back to Godhead, and with him, so that they would not suffer too much separation. They had lived with him for so many years. Just how much separation the residents of Vrindavan suffered only living with Krishna for 11 years. The Yadus lived with Krishna for over 100 years. So how much separation would they suffer? This is the first point here, that because they're relatives, so Krishna would never cause suffering to them. But there were some lesser demigods who also took birth. Some lesser demigods. Even the greater demigods, Krishna also protected them. I will explain that a little later. But the lesser demigods, when they became family members of Krishna, they may become a little puffed up. So for them, yes, Krishna was relieving them of course, whoever they were, even if they were lesser, it still was Yogamaya potency, because by being with Krishna, although they became temporarily bewildered by not being on the topmost platform, they were still, by seeing Krishna, they got the greatest benediction. So, anyway, this is the first part. That's just something I wanted to explain. So, by the will of Krishna, their whimsical behavior was stopped. Otherwise, they saw Krishna, they couldn't really understand who Krishna was. So, they were removed actually were removed after Krishna left. So in one sense, they got all that fortune and the little bit of pride that they had from becoming a family member of Krishna was also diminished by being killed by the arms. This is coming up, so I'll wait to get to that point. So continuing the purport. From the viewpoint of ordinary persons, all the demons had been killed by the Supreme Lord's pastimes in Dwarka and Mathura, as well as by the battle of Kurukshetra. And the earth was now free from its burden. Nevertheless, to free the earth from the remaining burden of his own puffed up family members, Lord Sri Krishna transferred them away from the earth by causing a fratricidal quarrel among them. In this way, he prepared for his own disappearance from the earth. So it says, not only the ordinary person's thought, just like the demigod. When Lord Nrsimhadev was playing with Hiranyakashipu, he was playing around with him. It compared like a cat playing with a mouse. So at that point, the demigods became nervous. What's wrong with the Lord? Has this demon become so powerful that the Lord cannot kill him? So they were thinking about themselves. What will happen if Hiranyakashipu survives this battle? We will be harassed. Even when they were praying to Lord Nrsimhadev afterward, after he actually defeated him, they were relieved. But they were revealing, now you have created an auspicious situation so we can enjoy, or we can be happy in this world. And Prahlad Maharaj, when Lord Nrsimhadev offered him happiness, I don't want it. When Lord Chaitanya offered happiness to Kolavecha Sridhar, he said, I will give you great wealth. Oh no, my Lord, please don't give me that. I will make you the king of the world. No, my Lord, please, no. I will give you all mystic powers. No, please, my Lord. What do you want? Please give me, please be that Brahman that harasses me by asking me for a better price, birth after birth. Please do that. Don't give me anything else. Please harass me. Because your harassment is created the greatest bliss for me. So this is the devotee. So they weren't really, there were some puffed up members, but we're not speaking about the eternal associates of the Lord as mentioned here in the beginning, like Pradyumna and other great personalities who are the Lord's eternal, and even the demigods, the greater demigods who are situated mostly in the mode of goodness. They could never become adverse to the Lord, or they could never become bewildered. Of course, anyone could become bewildered, even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. They became bewildered by the Lord's potency. But this was also Yoga Maya, especially in the case of Lord Shiva. This was the Lord Mohini Murti's Yoga Maya potency that caused him to even forget who Mohini Murti was, to show the danger of this material world. And Lord Brahma's bewilderment at seeing his daughter was actually a Yoga Maya arrangement to show us how dangerous this material world is. That anyone in any position, you can become. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur warns us, especially devotees. He says, if you become a very big devotee, then people will start to worship you. And then, if you get too many people worshiping you, then you will become bewildered. After some time, you will think, maybe they're right. Maybe I am great. And then you're finished. So, this is the warning. Warnings are there, but if we don't take the warnings are there in Bhagavad Gita, warnings are there in the Bhagavatam, warnings are there everywhere. Kala Krishna Das. He was warning, if you don't understand the Lord and the Lord's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, until you're situated in Krishna Prema, you must always remember the greatness of the Lord. Even if you're practicing Raganuga Bhakti, you still remember the greatness of the Lord. But you may be remembering his pastimes, his sweet pastimes in Vrindavan. But you never forget that only when one is situated in Prema Bhakti, then they forget the greatness of the Lord. By his, well, of course, those are situated in Vrindavan Prema. There's also Vaikuntha Prema. They don't forget the greatness. But that greatness causes them unlimited bliss. So, I'll read the next paragraph. This is quite a long purport. Sridhar Swami has pointed out the word Bahubi, by his arms, is used in the plural rather than the dual, to indicate that the Lord caused the destruction of the Yadu Dynasty in his four-armed form. The original form of Krishna as Govinda is two-armed, but it was by the plenary portion of the four-armed Narayan that the Lord killed all the demons on the earth and ultimately removed the burdensome members of his own family. It may be asked, if certain members of the Yadu family had become indifferent to the will of the Lord, why didn't they oppose the Lord in his plan to remove them from the earth? Therefore, the word aprameya is used, which indicates that it is impossible for anyone, even the Lord's own family members, to understand his will completely. Again, first of all, this point about arms. At the end of the 10th canto, the 90th chapter, a few verses back, there's a famous verse which was quoted by Lord Chaitanya when he took his darshan of Lord Jagannath, that Jayati Janani Vaso Devaki Janma Bhado, that he said, all glories, and all glories in the present tense, meaning that those glories will continue. Not that these glories are over with. They will continue. He says this because he doesn't want, because the disappearance of the Lord is coming up. He doesn't want anyone to become sad that Sukadev doesn't want people to think, oh, the Lord will disappear. Therefore, Devaki Janmavado. Devaki Janmavado, he is the eternal son of Devaki and Mother Yashoda and Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj. Otherwise, he's eternal. His pastimes will go on. There's no end. He simply comes and goes, just like Narada Muni. Lord the Paramatma appeared before him, and he said, he was a young boy, and he said, this is the last time you'll see me in this lifetime. Well, imagine if we saw the deity, and then someone said, you'll never see I'm 21 years old, and I see the deity, and then someone says, I'm sending you somewhere where there is no deities for the rest of your life. It would be very difficult. But he experienced so much bliss by seeing the Lord personally present before him. Even though the first thing that the Lord said, you will never see me again. So otherwise he's take advantage of this moment. Tulayama Lavanati Swargamna Punarbhavam. As Sutta Goswami said, that take advantage not only of the Lord's presence, but the Lord's appearance in the form of his pure devotee. Take advantage of that. Even if you get it for 1 second, take full advantage, and it will have such a wonderful effect that it is greater than the desire even to be liberated. Such a wonderful effect. What to speak of seeing the Lord? We have the opportunity to see the Lord every day in his merciful deity form. I mentioned many times, he's standing there 24 hours a day just to give his mercy. How many of us could stand 24 hours? We can barely stand for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, no. Very difficult. He's standing 24 hours just to give his mercy. Prabhupada said that human beings have legs, they can stand because they're conscious beings. Tables don't have legs also, but they cannot, they also stand for a long time, but with no consciousness. So if we're standing like a table with no consciousness, then our standing is useless. And if we're seeing the deity without understanding the degree of mercy that the deity is giving us, then also we are just like a statue. We're just standing, but we're not taking advantage of standing before the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then Shukadeva Goswami, he says, the Lord appears as Paramatma to bless everyone within their heart eternally, and he also appears to bless everyone eternally by understanding his form as Krishna. Then Yadu Parisha, he is the greatest among all the Yadus, and Swara Dorbhir, with his own hand, and it's mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, not only his own hand, but the hands, when he wants to get something done, he depends on the arms, and not his arms, but the arms of Arjuna. So even though Sridhar Swami says it's the forearm form, Jiva Goswami says no, it's the arms of all of his devotees who are carrying out his will that this was accomplished. So sometimes even our great acharyas, they may differ on a detail. So Sridhar Swami, what he's saying is true. But Jiva Goswami adds that Krishna didn't have to do it personally. He wanted his devotees to take credit. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he wanted his devotees to take credit for eliminating themselves. So even that, he wants the devotees to take credit because they are his eternal servants. So, so this original forearm form. And so how is it that being such great devotees, or even those who might have been on a lower platform, they could not detect the Lord's desire? How is that? The Lord is aprameya, mentioned in this verse. Aprameya. Aprameya means without any limit. Prameya means you can measure something. But the Lord is immeasurable, unfathomable, as it says here, is translated here. You can understand, just like we say, just at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Sabai Samparo Dhamar, Yado Bhaktir Adoksaja. Adoksaja means that Lord who could not be perceived by any material means, by the senses, by the mind, by the intelligence. You can only perceive him by his mercy. Only when he gives his mercy can you perceive him. Not by any other way. So this is also a very important point. And the other important point in this particular paragraph is that when he kills demons, he does it in his Vishnu form, or in his Dwarka Krishna, or Yadu Krishna form. Otherwise, his Dwarka form. He doesn't do it in his Krishna form, in his two-arm form. He actually takes extra arms. He takes some extra arms to kill demons, although he doesn't need to. He doesn't even need to use his arm. He can just do it with his chakra. But he does this to, especially as it's stated again and again when this pastime is spoken about, to bewilder the minds of the conditioned souls. the people who want to doubt about Krishna. Patashmita Jnanam Apohanam Sham. Krishna gives memory and remembrance and forgetfulness. So for people who want to enjoy this world, he lets them remember how wonderful it is. They look at Discovery Channel and they think, oh, isn't this wonderful? Such a wonderful thing. And then they hear about Krishna, oh, that sounds like mythology. Nowadays, even in India, the books say, yes, this is the mythological, so how bewildered they are. But they think, oh, everything else is all, because I can see it with my material eyes, which can't even see beyond this wall. They think that it must be real. And whatever they can't see. But then they go to the movies and they see some outer space thing, they believe it. They want to believe it because they're ultimately their spirit soul. They want to believe it. But then when you try to tell them that it exists, no, that doesn't exist. Because I can't see it. I can't defeat it. I can't measure it with my limited intelligence. But Krishna is aprameya. He is unlimited intelligence. So then, the next paragraph gets things in the perspective of our Purvacharyas. Sri Jiva Goswami has given another reason for the destruction of the Yadu Dynasty. He emphasizes that the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead should never be taken to be ordinary material activities, nor are the Lord's associates ordinary persons. Although the Lord apparently understood that the Supreme Lord is eternally situated with his entourage in his various abodes in the spiritual sky, such as Sri, Gokula, Mathura, and Dwaraka. The members of the Yadu Dynasty are eternal associates of the Lord, and therefore they cannot bear to be separated from the Lord. Since the Lord was preparing to give up his earthly pastimes, if he were to leave the Yadu Dynasty on earth, they would certainly become so disturbed by his absence that in their highly agitated state of mind, they would trample and destroy the earth. Therefore, Krishna arranged the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty prior to his appearance. So this is the second reason. The first reason I already mentioned, that he did not want them to suffer separation after so much personal association. They need his personal association. And the second reason is in their ecstasy, they would trample the earth. First of all, the unqualified ones who are not eternal associates, who are not higher demigods, who would return to Swargaloka for their service to the Lord. They were eternal associates, and they would not be able to control themselves, and they would create a problem for the earth. Although it's also stated that actually they were never a disturbance for the earth, but they might become. Therefore the Lord said, let me relieve the burden, the possible burden of the earth by my uncontrolled devotee. And that they would so powerful. And another reason is that if they remain, then Kali Yuga would never be able to, because Krishna promised Kali, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, as soon as I disappear, you can begin. He asked Krishna, when can I begin my service? And Krishna said, right when I disappear. So if he left the Yadus, Kali would not be able to do anything, because the Yadus would not allow Kali to. They would already be disturbed. What to speak if Kali appeared? They would kill him immediately. Wouldn't even give him a place, like Parikshit Maharaj. They would not be merciful to him, give him a place to stay. Las Vegas, Monte Carlo, all these places. Now there's casinos everywhere. Kali is, expanding his empire. Everywhere, all around the world, casino, casino, casino. Every country I go, there's casino, gambling everywhere. So this was another reason. If I would just read, it's a very long paragraph, a long purport. Sri Jiva Goswami concludes that ultimately the members of the Yadu dynasty are never to be considered irreligious. Vaishnavacharyas have mentioned that the story of the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty is especially meant to help the conditioned souls achieve liberation from the bondage of materialistic life. Within the three worlds, there were none as powerful and opulent as the Yadu dynasty. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the possessor of unlimited opulences, beauty, strength, knowledge, fame, and so on. And the members of the Yadu dynasty, being the personal associates of the Lord, were also endowed with inconceivable opulence. Therefore, when we see how a fratricidal war suddenly deprived the members of the Yadu dynasty of all their earthly possessions and even their lives, we can understand there is no permanent position within this material world. So here's another reason. The materialists, they try to create they think, well, if I get some more money, more opulence, and even Yamidam Pushpitam Bhacham, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that people start thinking, let me get heavenly situations. So here, these Yadus had the greatest opulence at but they lost it. So this is for materialistic people, not for devotees. Of course, if we're attached to our materialistic, some material things, then it's also for us. We can understand if the Yadus lost it, certainly I will. In other words, although the members of the Yadu dynasty are eternal associates of the Lord and were immediately transferred to another planet where the Lord was appearing, their sudden disappearance through fratricidal war is meant to impress upon the conditioned souls the temporary nature of this world. Therefore, the apparent indifference or enmity of certain members of the Yadu dynasty toward Krishna should not be taken to be actual irreligion on their part. The entire situation was arranged by Lord Krishna to teach a lesson to the conditioned soul. In this connection, Sri Jiva Goswami has cited several verses of the Bhagavatam to prove that the members of the Yadu dynasty achieved their exalted birth in the Lord's own family by innumerable pious activities and by complete absorption in thought of Lord Krishna. In fact, it is said that in sleeping, sitting, walking, and speaking, they were unable to remember their own selves because they were simply thinking of Krishna. So that's a verse that we just read some days. Actually, I read it last time I was here. Just to remind us of that verse, I just have it here, that the Vrishnis were so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that they forgot their own bodies while sleeping, sitting, walking, conversing, playing, bathing, and so on. So how could they become adverse to the Lord? They were so conscious of Him, they couldn't even remember what they were doing. Then the last paragraph. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.15.33, Srila Prabhupada has commented as follows on the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. The setting of the sun does not mean the end of the sun. It means that the sun is out of our sight. Similarly, the end of the mission of the Lord on a particular planet or universe only means that He is out of our sight. The end of the Yadu dynasty also does not mean that it is annihilated. It disappears along with the Lord out of their sight. So another point that was mentioned here, that the Yadus have to go with Krishna. He's going to appear on another planet. Not only did they go back home, back to Godhead, but they go to another planet. So this they can do because all of these eternal associates who participate with the Lord in Goloka Vrindavan, in the Dwarka portion, they also have to appear with the Lord whenever he appears in another planet. So they have to expand themselves. So this shows the power of a devotee. So I just wanted to mention that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives another perspective. He gives the perspective that actually none of the Yadus even went to the battlefield or the Pravas. They didn't go. That actually Pradyumna and the greatest personalities, they absorbed within their transcendental spiritual bodies all of the demigods. And they created facsimile bodies. And those facsimiles all went to Prabhat. And they were the ones that fought among themselves. But the Yadus actually never even did it. And just like the Lord himself left an external form to be to answer the hunter and be touched by the hunter, so that conditioned souls and envious people, who will always be frustrated, they will always be frustrated. And so he left his form, and in the same way, the Yadus, they absorbed, and then the eternal associates sent the higher demigods back to Svargaloka, wherever their residence was, and they themselves went with Krishna when Krishna disappeared. So actually, just like when Krishna, when Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys, it is said that actually these were not the real cowherd boys. The real cowherd boys entered within Krishna, and these were expansions of his external potency that were put into a cave. So the Lord is not going to let his eternal Goloka residents sit in a cave for 1 year. He's never going to allow that. He's not going to allow the actual Yadus to get drunk, fight among themselves, and kill each other. So Vishwanath Chakravarti explains in a very long purport, one of the longest purports he ever wrote, that this is all happening because of the transcendental nature of the spiritual bodies of the Lord and the Lord's eternal associates. So anyway, these are some thoughts on this very long purport, and I will stop here. If there's any comment or any question, as soon as the bell stops ringing.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, there. Haribol.
This pastime is a very painful incident. Devotees feel a lot of pain during this pastime. And also very vividly pastime. Just like Lord Krishna took all the Brajavasis very silently to go to Vrindavan. Why the Lord had performed this pastime of giving all the illusion?
He creates illusion. He creates illusion for those who want to be. Otherwise, some people are Rakshasas. So, as I said, Matashvitir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. If someone wants to be a Rakshasa, then he helps them forget about him and think that he's an ordinary person. And he helps them remember the material nature as the object of their faith and their devotion. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta. It's hard to look over there all the time. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shadhayarti chamichati tasya tasya saram shadha. That Krishna is actually warning us in that verse. Be careful where you put your faith. If you put your faith in the material energy, and what does that mean? Whatever you dedicate your time to, that is the object of your faith. So we dedicate our time worshiping the deity, doing Sankirtan, and even if we're working, we're thinking that all this work is being done for Krishna. You have, even those who work outside, they have to be careful that they don't just think that this work is ordinary. As Rupa Goswami says, Iha yasya harer dase kamana manasa gira nikilas vasivasta su. It may appear that a devotee is working like someone else, but actually they're always meditating on Krishna. And therefore, jivan mukta sa uchate. Therefore, they are known as liberated souls. So, but materialistic people, they have to have a reason. No, Krishna, they want to forget Krishna. Krishna gives them full facility for forgetting him. So, just how fortunate are we that we have this wonderful temple and so many temples, and the Lord appears. No, he's appeared all over the world. Any big city you go to, even now, there's a temple in Saudi Arabia. So they recently gave permission to have a temple because they have so many Indian workers, even Saudi Arabia. So we can see that Lord Chaitanya is preparing the world to become Krishna conscious. We're preparing for his golden age. There may be some disruption to get to that point, but even in Saudi Arabia, even the king of Saudi Arabia, whatever his sheikh or whatever he is, he asked Putin, can we put a mosque in Moscow? And he said, can I put a church in Saudi Arabia? He said, no, then you cannot have a mosque in Moscow. So, but by Krishna's arrangement, we can have a temple in Saudi Arabia. So, because they don't see the Hindus as being very much missionary spirit. No. They're working there. You know, so. But the Christians, if they come, and he knows they will, preach to the people. Little does he know that even some of our workers planted there in Saudi Arabia, they're very carefully may be preaching, very carefully, because it's still the death sentence. If you preach another religion in Saudi Arabia, you can get the death sentence. I actually got stuck there once, and it's a long story, but I was accidentally preaching, and the police came, and only because I just went to the market to get some fruit, and these people started asking me questions, and so I explained a little basic, without saying, understanding of Bhagavad Gita. They were fascinated. And more people came, and then the police came. They said, what's going on? I said, we're speaking about Allah. I said, Allah. And everybody said, Allah, Allah. And the police smiled and left. But then I also realized I better leave also. This is like Krishna's warning. Be careful in this place. Anyway, so this is Krishna's mercy. So now it's time for us to stop. One quick question, because we have 1 minute.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the initial part, first part of the lecture, you mentioned that how a devotee sees suffering as a test of the Lord. In our life, Maharaj, when suffering comes to our physical body, we go to doctor, test, treatment, again. So there is no feeling of blessings. When we get insulted, then we try to adjust that, rectify or make other people understand that I'm not from this cause like this. So then how this situation will come in life and we see such situations as a blessing of the Lord.
What was that last part? That last part?
When we see such situations as mercy of life,
Mercy of life.
Mercy of the Lord.
Yeah.
When such situations, when somebody insults us or some miserable situation, God gives.
It is the mercy of the Lord. Actually, there's a verse which I memorized, but I can't remember it now, by Muchukunda, where he says that if someone going through the cycle of birth and death is comes to the point of so much suffering that they will be put in touch with the devotees. No. But Jiva Goswami, explaining that verse, he says, and you know, this is mentioned in the Bhagavatam itself, in our version, that actually even unlimited amounts of suffering cannot bring one into the association of devotees. It is the mercy of the devotees themselves. So the devotees, the merciful devotees, are the actual way that we come in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not even by Krishna's arrangement. Krishna's arrangement is that he becomes Lord Chaitanya and he sends his devotees. And by their mercy, no. Because Krishna wants the devotees to take credit. And he could do it. Yeah. Lord Chaitanya says, I'm the only gardener. But he could actually, of course, he could distribute all these fruits, but he wants the devotees to do it. So it's actually the devotees' mercy. But if one becomes aware of so much suffering, then Paramatma may guide the devotees to that individual. But it is only actually the mercy of the devotees. So thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Jai Gaura Premanandi.